The sights and sounds of children being separated from their families at the U.S. border has evoked strong reaction around the world. Our next guest says it's reminiscent of the residential schools and the 60s scoop in Canada. Her grandmother went to a residential school, and that experience impacted the family for generations. Ellen Gabriel is an Indigenous rights activist. She joins us from Kanesatake, Quebec. Ellen, can you tell us how you're seeing what's happening at the U.S.-Mexico border? How is it resonating with you?
Well, I think parallels can be drawn when the manner of and the policies of Indian residential school enforcibly removing children from their homes, from their families, not being able to see them as a matter of state policy. And it's very hurtful, and I think it must do a lot for the survivors of Indian residential schools, because they know what it's like to be torn away from your parents and your family. It's a very disturbing image, considering the decades of human rights accomplishments that have been done. And here in Canada, the Indian residential school system that has been denounced by the United Nations. And the fact that this is going against the rights of the child, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is international law.
Mm-hmm. And when you say that there are some people who have experienced things like this, who know what it's like, can you explain what is that like to be separated from your family?
Well, there's hundreds and thousands of Indigenous peoples that went through the Indian residential school system. And what it does is a traumatic event, whether they're young or older. The children experience trauma, and if you don't deal with the trauma, then as many social workers and psychologists will tell you, the effects are you're not going to feel, you're not going to trust, and you're not going to talk about the things that are happening to you. And we know that for children who are separated from their parents, this traumatic event will carry on with them for many years if they don't deal with it, and it's setting them up for failure. And this is supposed to be about the dignity of a person. And all UN members are supposed to talk about dignity, uphold human rights. And this is definitely not doing that.
And what is the impact for generations to come when someone goes through something so traumatic?
Well, I just mentioned some of the things, the characteristics of people who have gone through trauma and post-traumatic stress, the kinds of, not having access to your parents means that you're not being loved. It means that you are not worth a lot. And as we know in many Indigenous communities, we have a lot of social problems that are rooted in colonialism. And so when we see stuff like this happening south of the border, we see that it's exactly like the Indian residential school system and assimilation policies to get rid of the identity. And this is all for a political ideology, and it's used for whatever purposes of agendas of individuals. So it's, we're seeing something really disturbing, and I think that the world community has to denounce this, because, the U.S. and Canada have accepted refugees from many, many parts of the world, and these people and these children are no exception.